The morning sun spilled over Manchester, casting a pale glow across the city's brick terraces and bustling streets. Matt Armstrong, a young football coach with a fire in his belly and a reputation for turning underdog teams into contenders, sat in his cluttered office at the local club. Papers littered his desk, training schedules, player stats, and scribbled tactics for the upcoming match. But today, something tugged at him, a restless urge to step away from the whiteboard and see the world beyond the pitch. He'd heard murmurs about the state of the local hospital, complaints from players' families about long waits and tired staff. Matt wasn't one for sitting idle. "I'm heading to St. Mary's Hospital," he announced to his assistant, Jamie, who looked up from his laptop, startled. "Mate, we've got drills to plan, and the lads are shaky after last week's loss," Jamie protested, pushing his glasses up his nose. Matt shook his head, already grabbing his jacket. "Can't fix what's out there if I'm stuck in here, can I? I need to see it for myself. No heads up to the hospital, no fuss. Just me." Jamie sighed, but knew better than to argue with Matt when his mind was set. With no fanfare, Matt hopped into his beat-up Ford hatchback, leaving the club's training ground behind. He wore a simple tracksuit, the kind he'd worn for years on muddy pitches, blending seamlessly with the early morning crowd. St. Mary's Hospital loomed ahead, a gray concrete block that had seen better days. As he parked and stepped out, the air carried the sharp tang of antiseptic and exhaust fumes. Two mates from the club, who doubled as his unofficial security, trailed him quietly. Inside, the hospital was a hive of controlled chaos patients slumped on plastic chairs, nurses darting between rooms, and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The receptionist, a harried woman with a tight bun, barely glanced up as Matt slipped past, his eyes scanning the scene. He didn't want a tour from some nervous administrator. He wanted the raw truth of the place. The hallways smelled of bleach and worry, and the walls, once white, were scuffed and peeling. He stopped by a young mum cradling a feverish toddler, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "You all right, love?" Matt asked, crouching to her level, his Manchester accent thick and warm. She nodded faintly, managing a tired smile. "We're trying to make things better," he said, squeezing her shoulder. "Hang in there." He moved on, shaking hands with an old man who muttered thanks, his voice cracking with gratitude for the small gesture. The reality hit hard. The hospital was stretched, thin, outdated monitors beeped faintly, medicine trolleys looked half-stocked, and the staff moved like they were running on fumes. Matt's jaw tightened as he spotted a leaky pipe dripping into a bucket in the corner. A doctor, a wiry bloke in his 50s with deep lines etched into his face, approached cautiously. "Mr. Armstrong?" "Dr. Patel, head of A&E. Didn't expect you here." Matt grinned, easy and disarming. "That's the point, mate. Show me the real deal. No polish." Dr. Patel hesitated, then nodded, leading him toward the emergency ward. "It's rough, but we manage," he said, his voice carrying a mix of pride and exhaustion. Matt followed, taking it all in: the creaking beds, the flickering lights, the quiet resilience of people doing their best with too little. As they turned a corner, Matt's trainer skidded on a slick patch of floor, and he nearly went down, catching himself on the wall. "Careful, love. Just mopped," came a soft voice, laced with a faint Yorkshire lilt. Matt turned to see an older woman in a faded blue cleaner's uniform, clutching a mop and bucket. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, and her face, lined with years of hard work, stayed downcast as she murmured, "Sorry, sir." "No bother. My fault for not watching my step," Matt replied, his tone kind but distracted. He was about to move on when something stopped him cold. Her voice, it was like a half-remembered song, stirring something deep in his chest. He studied her, the way she gripped the mop, her posture humble yet steady. "You all right?" he asked, softer now, his eyes narrowing. She glanced up, startled, her brown eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment before dropping again. "Fine, sir. Just doing my job," she said quietly. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "Shall we, Mr. Armstrong?" But Matt didn't budge, his heart picking up speed. There was something about her, those eyes, that voice. It was like a puzzle piece he didn't know he'd lost. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice calm but urgent. The woman blinked, hesitating. "Eleanor, sir," she said, barely above a whisper. The name hit him like a stray pass, familiar yet heavy, like it carried a weight he couldn't place. "Eleanor," he repeated, testing it, his mind racing. "Thanks for keeping this place spotless." She nodded, still avoiding his gaze, and Matt forced himself to follow Dr. Patel, though his thoughts stayed pinned to her. As they moved through the ward, Matt's focus kept slipping. Eleanor's face, gentle, weathered, strong, kept flashing in his mind, pulling at threads of memory he hadn't touched in years. A village green, the smell of damp grass, a woman's laugh as a boy kicked a battered football. He shook it off, trying to listen as Dr. Patel pointed out broken equipment and understaffed shifts, but it was no use. Eleanor's image clung to him, sharper with every step. In the pediatric ward, he caught sight of her again, mopping a far hallway, her movements steady and unhurried. His chest tightened. "Doc, carry on with my mate here," he said, nodding to one of his friends. "I'll catch up." He strode toward Eleanor, his trainer squeaking on the tiles. She startled as he approached, her grip tightening on the mop. "Didn't mean to scare you, Eleanor," he said, his voice warm, carrying the easy authority of someone used to rallying a team. "Just wanted a quick word, if that's all right." Her eyes widened, and she stammered, "I haven't done out wrong, have I?" Matt chuckled, shaking his head. "Nah, love, you're grand. Just curious how long you've been working here." Eleanor relaxed slightly, though her hand stayed busy with the mop. "Must be 25 years now," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Came to Manchester after leaving my village." Matt's pulse quickened. "Which village?" he asked, leaning in. "Little Thornton, up in Yorkshire," she replied, her eyes flickering with something memory, maybe, or caution. The name hit Matt like a tackle. Little Thornton, his childhood village, where stone walls lined narrow lanes, and the air smelled of peat and rain. Memories flooded back, a boy running across a field, a woman's voice calling him in for tea, the thud of a football against a barn door. "Little Thornton?" he echoed, his voice tight. "You ever know a woman named Sarah? Sarah Armstrong?" Eleanor's head lifted slowly, her eyes meeting his, wide with something unspoken. "Sarah," she whispered. I knew her. She was your mum, wasn't she?" Matt's throat closed up. He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "You knew me then?" he managed, his voice rough. Eleanor's eyes glistened, and she nodded slowly. "You were just a lad, barely 6, when your dad passed. Sarah was sick even then. I looked after you for a bit." The hospital noise faded, like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Matt's mind reeled, piecing together fragments: a warm kitchen, a woman's hands tying his laces, stories of knights and dragons by a crackling fire. "Eleanor," he said, almost to himself, "were you close to us?" She wiped a tear, her voice steady despite the emotion. "More than close. I was your mum's best mate, lived next door. When she got poorly, I promised her I'd look after you." Matt's knees felt weak, but he stood firm, his eyes locked on hers. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked, softer now. Eleanor gave a small, sad smile. "You were taken to the city by your aunt after Sarah passed. I was just a neighbor. No family, no claim. I moved here, started over. Didn't think you'd remember me." Matt shook his head, a mix of awe and guilt washing over him. "I do remember. Bits and pieces, but I do." He glanced around the busy hallway. "This isn't the place for this. Where do you live now?" Eleanor hesitated. "Just a flat in Salford, with my niece. It's nowt special." Matt's jaw set. "I'd like to come see you tomorrow if that's all right." Her eyes widened. "You? At my place? It's not fit for someone like you." Matt smiled, the kind of smile that had rallied losing teams at halftime. "I'm not coming as a coach, Eleanor. I'm coming as the kid from Little Thornton, looking for answers." He rejoined Dr. Patel, finishing the tour, but his mind was elsewhere. Eleanor's face, her voice, the name Nana Ellie, it was all coming back, like a goal he'd forgotten he'd scored. Back at his flat that evening, Matt canceled his evening calls, ignoring Jamie's texts about training schedules. He dug through an old box in his closet, pulling out a faded photo album. There was his mum, Sarah, smiling with him on her lap, the Yorkshire hills in the background. No sign of Eleanor, but the memories were there, her voice singing lullabies, her hands tossing a football to him in the yard. He picked up his phone. "Jamie, I need you to find someone for me," he said, his voice low. "Eleanor Thompson, cleaner at Street Mary's, originally from Little Thornton. Keep it quiet, yeah?" Jamie didn't ask questions, just promised to dig. That night, Matt couldn't sleep. Images flashed through his mind, kicking a ball in the rain. A woman's laugh, the smell of fresh bread in a cramped kitchen. Was it his mum or Eleanor? The lines blurred. By morning, Jamie had a file. Eleanor Thompson, 64, widowed, working at Street Mary's since the late 92nd, living in a modest flat in Salford with her niece, Lily. No criminal record, no headlines, just a quiet life of hard work. Matt stared at the file, his coffee going cold. He made up his mind. No cameras, no entourage, just him, his car, and one mate to drive. "You've got a meeting with the club sponsors at noon," Jamie reminded him, exasperated. "Push it," Matt said firmly. "This is personal." The drive to Salford was quiet, the city waking up around him, kids in school uniforms, delivery vans, the hum of morning life. Eleanor's flat was in a tired brick building, washing lines strung across tiny balconies. Matt told his mate to wait in the car and knocked on the metal gate. A young woman, maybe 20, answered, her hands wet from washing dishes. "I'm looking for Eleanor," Matt said, offering a warm smile. She pointed to a door, eyes wide with recognition. "You're that football coach, aren't you?" Matt just nodded, stepping inside. The flat was small but spotless, with faded curtains and a few framed photos on a shelf. Eleanor sat by the window, a mug of tea in her hands. She didn't look surprised. "Knew you'd come," she said, her voice calm but heavy with feeling. "Fancy a cuppa?" Matt sat across from her, the air thick with unspoken history. Outside, kids shouted in the street, and a motorbike revved past. "Since yesterday, I can't stop thinking about you," he started, his voice low. "Your face, your voice, it's like I've known you forever, but I can't grab hold of it." Eleanor poured tea, her hands steady despite her age. "Kids forget things," she said softly, "but the heart doesn't always let go." She stood, moving to a small wooden box on a shelf, and pulled out a tiny, worn football charm, the kind a kid might clip to a backpack. "This was yours," she said, handing it to him. "Your mum gave it to you before she got sick. Said it'd bring you luck on the pitch." Matt held the charm, his fingers tracing the faded leather. Memories crashed in a boy kicking a ball in a muddy yard, a woman cheering him on, her voice carrying over the wind. "How do you have this?" he asked, his voice thick. Eleanor sat back down, her eyes distant. "When Sarah got ill, I was her closest mate. She asked me to look after you. For 3 years, I cooked your meals, patched your trousers, taught you how to kick a ball proper. You called me Nana Ellie 'cause you couldn't say Eleanor." Matt's chest tightened. "Nana Ellie," he whispered, the name unlocking a flood of warmth, her laugh, her strong hands, the way she'd tell him stories about football legends to get him to sleep. "I remember you," he said, his voice breaking. "I remember." Eleanor's eyes shimmered, but she smiled. "When Sarah passed, your aunt took you to Manchester. I begged to keep you, but I was now to them just a neighbor. So I came here, started cleaning, kept going." Matt knelt beside her, taking her hands. "You were more than a neighbor," he said, his voice fierce with gratitude. "You were my second mum." Eleanor's smile was soft, tinged with sorrow. "Maybe they told you to forget, but you didn't, not really." Matt sat back, his mind spinning. "How'd you live all these years?" he asked gently. She shrugged. "Simple. Worked, raised my niece, Lily. After her mum, my sister passed. Watched you on the telly, winning matches, making a name. I was proud, but I didn't think you'd want me turning up, some old cleaner from your past." Matt shook his head, a lump in his throat. "You should have come to me." Eleanor's eyes met his, steady and kind. "And say what? That I was your stand? In mum? You were climbing, lad. I didn't want to slow you down." Matt's laugh was half a sob. "Slow me down? Nana Ellie, you're the reason I'm here. Those first kicks, those stories, you put the fight in me." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years settling between them. Eleanor pulled out a small photo, creased and faded, of a young Matt grinning in a too-big football kit, her arm around him. "Kept this all these years," she said softly. "You were my boy, even after you left." Matt's eyes burned, but he grinned. "You're still my Nana Ellie." The morning slipped away, the two of them lost in stories of Little Thornton, of Sarah, of the boy who'd dreamed of the pitch. Matt forgot his phone buzzing, the matches waiting, the world outside. For now, he was just a lad from Yorkshire, sitting with the woman who'd shaped him, piecing together the roots of who he was. The floodlights buzzed over the muddy pitch at Moss Side Community Stadium, casting long shadows across the grass where Matt Armstrong's team, the Manchester Hawks, ran drills. The air was thick with the scent of wet turf and sweat, the kind of smell that clung to Matt's skin like a second home. He stood on the sidelines, whistle around his neck, barking orders to his players, mostly lads from rough estates, kids with more grit than polish. "Oi, Danny, keep your head up. Pass, don't hoe it," he shouted, his Manchester accent cutting through the evening chill. But his mind wasn't fully on the game. Since his reunion with Eleanor 3 weeks ago, something had shifted in him. The fire to win was still there, but now it burned for something bigger than trophies. He glanced at his phone, a text from his assistant, Jamie. "Sponsors are fuming about you missing that meeting. We need to talk." Matt shoved the phone in his pocket. The sponsors could wait. Tonight, he had a plan, one that would change things, not just for him and Eleanor, but for people like her across the city. Back at his flat, Matt sat at his kitchen table, a half-eaten kebab pushed aside, papers and a laptop open in front of him. He'd been sketching out ideas since his visit to Eleanor's modest Salford flat, her words echoing in his head. "I did what I could with what I had." Her quiet strength, the way she'd raised him and her niece, Lily, on a cleaner's wage, it lit a spark in him. He wanted to honor her, not with a one-off gesture, but with something lasting. He typed furiously, drafting a proposal for a foundation to support women like Eleanor, cleaners, carers, the unsung heroes who kept communities going. He called it the Green Roots Foundation, a nod to the Yorkshire fields where he'd first kicked a ball under Eleanor's watchful eye. The idea was simple: fund training programs for older women in healthcare and grassroots sports, and offer scholarships for kids from tough backgrounds, the kind Matt had been. He scribbled a mission statement: "For the women who build our roots, and the kids who'll grow from them." It felt right, like a perfectly timed pass. The next morning, Matt called a meeting at the club, not with the players, but with his inner circle, Jamie, a few trusted coaches, and Sarah, the club's PR manager, who'd been hounding him about brand image since he skipped the sponsor meeting. "Right, listen up," Matt said, standing at the head of a cramped meeting room, his tracksuit swapped for a rare button-up shirt. "I'm starting a foundation. It's for women like the one who raised me when I had knout women who work hard, get no thanks, and keep the world turning. We're talking cleaners, nurses, carers, the lot. And it's for kids who need a leg up like I did." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her pen tapping her notebook. "Matt, it's a great story, but we're in the red after that last loss. Sponsors are twitchy. You sure this is the time?" Matt leaned forward, his eyes fierce. "It's exactly the time. People need something to believe in, not just another match. This is bigger than football." "Jamie, ever practical," chimed in. "How you funding this, mate?" "We're barely keeping the lights on." Matt grinned, undeterred. "We start small crowdfunding, local businesses, maybe a charity match. I'll put in my own cash to kick it off." Sarah sighed but scribbled notes. "All right, but we need a big moment to launch it. Something public, emotional, to get people talking." That's when Matt knew what he had to do. He'd bring Eleanor to the pitch, tell her story to the world not just as his second mum, but as a symbol of every woman who'd ever scrubbed floors or patched up kids without asking for glory. He spent the next week planning, pulling strings to book the community stadium for a special event. He invited local press, community leaders, and even a few Premier League players he'd met through coaching circles. The Hawks were set to play a friendly match, but this wasn't about the scoreline. It was about Eleanor. He drove to her flat in Salford, the familiar creak of the gate greeting him as he knocked. Lily answered, her face lighting up. "Auntie's in the back, making tea as usual," she said, grinning. Eleanor appeared, her gray hair neatly pinned, her eyes cautious but warm. "What's this about, lad?" she asked, pouring him a cuppa. Matt took a deep breath. "I want you to come to the stadium next week. I'm telling your story, our story, to everyone. You're not just a cleaner, Nana Ellie. You're the reason I'm here, and I want the world to know it." Eleanor's hands froze on the teapot. "Me? In front of all them people? I'm nobody special." Matt leaned forward, his voice firm. "You're everything special. You raised me, Lily, and God knows how many others. This is for you." La. The day of the event arrived. A crisp evening with a crowd of about 1,000 packed into the stands, locals, families, kids in Hawks jerseys, and a handful of reporters. The pitch was lit up, the grass freshly mowed, and a small stage sat at the center, draped in green to match the foundation's name. Matt stood backstage, his stomach churning. Not from nerves about speaking, he'd rallied teams in worse spots than this, but from the weight of what he was about to do. Eleanor stood beside him, clutching Lily's hand, her face pale under her best Sunday dress, a deep blue number that made her look regal despite her protests. "I don't belong here, Matt," she whispered, eyeing the crowd. He squeezed her shoulder, his grin steady. You belong more than anyone, Nana Ellie. Just be you. The announcer called his name, and Matt stepped onto the stage, mic in hand, the crowd's cheers washing over him like a warm wave. "Evening, Manchester," he called, his voice booming. "You lot know me as the bloke shouting at the Hawks, but tonight's not about football. It's about family, roots, and the people who hold us up when we're falling." He paused, letting the crowd settle, then gestured to Eleanor. "This is Eleanor Thompson. To most, she's a cleaner at St. Mary's Hospital. To me, she's my second mum." A murmur rippled through the stands as Eleanor stepped forward, hesitant but straight-backed, Lily at her side. Matt's voice softened. "When I was 6, my mum, Sarah, got sick. She passed, and my world fell apart. But Eleanor, she took me in, cooked my dinners, taught me how to kick a ball, told me stories when I couldn't sleep. For 3 years, she was my rock. Then life pulled us apart, and I forgot her until a few weeks ago, when I slipped on her freshly mopped floor at St. Mary's." The crowd laughed, a warm, knowing sound, and Eleanor's lips twitched into a shy smile. Matt's tone turned serious. She never asked for thanks, never wanted a spotlight. But women like her, cleaners, carers, the ones who work late and love quietly, they're the backbone of this city. That's why I'm launching the Green Roots Foundation, to support women like Eleanor and give kids like I was a chance to shine. He held up a plaque, simple but engraved with Eleanor's name and a line. "For the love that grows our roots." The crowd erupted, clapping and whistling as Matt handed it to her hands trembling as she took it. He leaned in, his voice low but clear over the mic. "This is for you, Nana Ellie, and for every woman like you." Tears shone in her eyes, but she stood tall, the crowd's cheers wrapping around her like a hug. Matt turned back to the audience. "We're starting with training programs for women in healthcare and grassroots sports, and scholarships for kids who need a shot. Tonight's match is a fundraiser. Every penny goes to Green Roots. So dig deep, yeah?" The applause roared again, and Matt felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for Eleanor, for the idea taking root. The match kicked off, the Hawks against a local rival, the energy electric despite the low stakes. Matt watched from the sidelines, Eleanor and Lily seated nearby in the stands, wrapped in Hawks, scarves. But the night wasn't all smooth passes. By halftime, his phone buzzed with notifications, tweets, and articles already spinning the event as a PR stunt. Armstrong's sob story, genuine or just good branding? One headline read. Sarah, the PR manager, pulled him aside, her face tight. "Matt, this is blowing up, but not all of it's good. Some reporters are saying you're using Eleanor to dodge flack for the team's losses." Matt's jaw clenched. "Let him talk. This isn't about me," Sarah sighed. "It's not just talk. Sponsors are spooked. If we don't win soon, they might pull funding, foundation or not." Matt nodded, his eyes on the pitch. "Then we win, and we keep this going." The second half was brutal, the Hawks trailing 2-1 with minutes left. Matt shouted himself hoarse, urging his lads to dig deep. In the final seconds, Danny, the scrappy midfielder, weaved through defenders and slotted a goal, tying the game. The crowd exploded, and Matt caught Eleanor's eye. She was on her feet, cheering like she was back in Little Thornton, watching him as a kid. After the match, he found her by the tunnel, her face flushed with pride. "You did good, lad," she said, her voice thick. Matt grinned. "Couldn't have done it without you." But the victory was bittersweet. Back in his office, Matt scrolled through more online chatter, some praising the foundation, others tearing into him. "He's no hero, just a coach on a losing streak," one comment read. He slammed his laptop shut, frustration boiling. This wasn't about him, but the noise was drowning out Eleanor's story. Determined to push forward, Matt threw himself into the foundation. He and Jamie met with local businesses, pitching Green Roots over cheap coffee and greasy spoons. A few signed on small shops, a pub, even a butcher who'd watched Matt's games as a kid. But the big sponsors stayed wary, and the Hawks' next match ended in a 3-0 loss, fueling more headlines. "Armstrong's charity can't save his team," one paper sneered. Matt ignored it, focusing on the foundation's first steps, setting up a training program for hospital cleaners to become healthcare assistants, and a scholarship for 2 local kids to join a youth football academy. He invited Eleanor to the first training session, held in a community center near St. Mary's. She walked in, hesitant, as a dozen women, cleaners, carers, single mums listened to a nurse explain basic medical skills. Eleanor sat quietly, but Matt saw her eyes light up, the same way they had when she'd taught him to aim for the top corner. "You could do this, you know," he whispered to her. She shook her head, smiling. "I'm too old, lad." But later she stayed, asking the nurse questions, her voice steady with curiosity. The foundation gained traction, with small donations trickling in and a few ex-players tweeting support. But the pressure was mounting. The Hawks were slipping in the league, and sponsors were pulling back, threatening to cut the club's budget. At a tense meeting, Sarah laid it out. "Matt, we need a win, or the club's in trouble. Green Roots is great, but it won't pay the bills." Matt nodded, his mind racing. He couldn't let the team or the foundation fail. He called a team meeting, gathering the lads in the locker room. "This isn't just about football," he told them, his voice raw. "It's about people like my Nana Ellie, who gave everything for me. We're fighting for them, for this city. So get out there and play like it." The next match was a grinder, but the Hawks scraped a 1-0 win, Matt's voice hoarse from shouting, his heart pounding with relief. With the team steadying, Matt planned a bigger move, a charity match in Little Thornton, his childhood village, to raise funds and bring the foundation's mission home. He drove Eleanor and Lily up to Yorkshire, the rolling hills and stone walls stirring memories of muddy boots and her warm kitchen. The village green was transformed, a temporary pitch set up, local kids buzzing with excitement. Matt invited Eleanor to kick off the match, her trainer sinking into the grass as she tapped the ball to a roar from the crowd. Afterward, they visited the old cottage where she'd raised him, now a bit run down but still standing. An elderly neighbor approached, holding a small wooden whistle Matt had carved as a boy. "You used to blow this till we were all sick of it," she said, laughing. Matt spun it in his hands, the weight of his past grounding him. Eleanor sat beside him, quiet and content, watching kids play on the green. "You've done me proud," she said softly. Matt turned to her, his voice low. "Can I call you Nana Ellie in front of everyone now?" She smiled, her eyes warm. "You've always been my lad, Matt. Always will be." As the sun dipped low, painting the hills gold, Matt stood on the green, addressing the crowd. "This foundation, this match, it's for women like Eleanor, who give everything and ask for nought. Let's keep their roots growing." The applause was deafening, and for the first time in weeks, Matt felt the weight lift. The Hawks won the charity match 4-2, and donations poured in enough to fund the first year of Green Roots. Back in Manchester, the story spread, not as a PR stunt, but as a call to honor the quiet heroes. Matt knew the road ahead was tough, more matches, more skeptics, but with Eleanor's strength behind him, he felt ready. The roots she'd planted in him were growing again, stronger than ever, and he'd make sure they spread across the city, one kick at a time.